The managing director of Nigeria Air, Dakpo Olumide, has told the Senate that the aircraft that came into the country recently was only to show to Nigerians how the logo of the Nigerian Air project will look like a real aircraft. Olumide, who appeared before the Senate, confirmed that the aircraft in question is a private Ethiopian airline chartered flight that has since returned to Ethiopia. He says Nigeria Air is still in the works. Arise correspondent Omo Bazwaye reports.
Few days after the much anticipated Nigerian Air, a proposed national carrier, touched down at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport in Abuja, the airline, especially the manner it arrived in the country, has remained a matter of serious controversy. The bad publicity prompted the Senate, through its Committee on Aviation, to grill those directly involved in the project, accusing the immediate past Minister Hadid Sirika, who was absent on the day, of completely shutting them out of the project.
The non-transparent manner in which the Nigeria Air project was awarded to Ethiopian Airlines at the detriment of Airlines Operators of Nigeria, AON, which has given way to surrendering our sovereign wealth to foreigners as claimed by the airline operators in Nigeria in one of their petitions to the committee.
The Nigerian Air was flown into the country wearing an Ethiopian registration number, fueling suspicion in many quarters, including that of the Senate. When asked about the whereabouts of the aircraft, the interim managing director of Nigerian Air, Dakpo Olamide, broke the ice when he told lawmakers that what they saw was an Ethiopian chartered flight to show Nigerians and shareholders what the logo of Nigerian Air looks like on a real aircraft.
So when this aircraft came in on a charter flight, everybody said, "We have launched Nigeria Air." And I thought this was very interesting because there are learned people in the aviation industry who could have countered that when social media came out, but they chose not to. But that's fine, I'm here to explain. It was just a charter flight.
Olumide, who was brought in last February to help secure air operating license for Nigerian Air, said the hired aircraft had since returned to Ethiopia and that the proposed national carrier is yet to be licensed.
But the problem is that when you change what we call post holders, you're a post holder, for example, all of you are post holders on the committee. Post holders in aviation is a technical term for director of maintenance, chief pilot, all those type of things. When you change them and replace them completely, you have to go back to phase one to interview them. They have to be interviewed to be compliant and acceptable to the authorities.
The Senate panel was not particularly satisfied with his explanation, wondering why the ex-Royal minister had to rush the process and create the impression the Nigerian Air was up and running. The minister was quoted to have said 4 more aircraft would follow.
Why will you, for whatever reason, having an interim MD, be in a hurry to unveil a national carrier on the last day of your administration? Why?
As it is today, you are not starting well. You have image problem from day one. But, what you did was, we should come and see, But being as that is me, I want to know that in Nigeria, this kind of strategy doesn't really work.
The logo and name of Nigerian Air was unveiled at Farnborough Air Show in the United Kingdom 5 years ago, but the project has been a matter of serious controversy, a situation the Ninth Senate, in a last-ditch effort, is hoping to resolve. Omo Bazwaye, Arise News.
Well, the House of Representatives Committee on Aviation has knocked the former Minister of Aviation, Hadid Sirika, over what is called secrecy in the deals and activities of the Nigeria Air. The committee said after careful evaluation of the issues, it is totally dissatisfied with the actions of the former minister in going ahead to flag off the operations of Nigeria Air despite a standing court injunction and without any provision for sustaining the operations of the airline. The committee also frowned at the role played by Ethiopian Airlines, saying it does not speak well of the excellent brotherly relationship existing between Nigeria and Ethiopia.
We want to put on record that the committee, and indeed the National Assembly has no role in the purported launch of Nigeria Air or anything related thereof. We as a committee will not accept any attempt by any individual or group of individuals or organization to hide under the project Nigeria Air and siphon our commonwealth. Consequently, the committee hereby resolved to 1. Direct the Federal Ministry of Aviation and its partners in the Nigeria Air project to immediately suspend any operations regarding to Nigeria Air and every other action with respect to Nigeria Air. 2. Urge our new president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, the president and commander-in-chief, to, as a matter of urgency, constitute a high-level presidential committee to undertake a holistic review of the processes of the whole Nigeria Air project and advise the government on the way forward. 3. Ensure that all individuals or groups or organizations involved in the controversial Nigeria Air takeoff are brought to book, prosecuted and sanctioned.
Well, okay, so many things to talk about this morning. Your take on Nigeria Air and what the House of Representatives has described as fraud.
It is an embarrassment for Nigeria. There's no other way to look at this. This is a national embarrassment, national disgrace. And I think what the National Assembly has done so far, and indicating very clearly that this is a fraud, it means that the 10th Assembly has a duty and responsibility to investigate this further and to probe the Minister of Aviation, because this is a disgrace for Nigeria. How do we have a situation where something is rushed just the last 48 hours before the end of a tenure that you know that it cannot be brought back? This tenure is over. 2 days before, you're rushing to bring Nigeria into Nigeria. This is a situation where you should just have handed it over, and you say government is a continuum. So you let the next administration to run with it, but it looks, and I think the way they say it is, if it, how do they say it now? Ruben, help me. If it quacks like a duck and walks and goes like it is definitely a duck. So what we're saying in essence is, if you have a situation where things look this way, there is something that is hidden, and that has to be unearthed by the next assembly, the 10th Assembly. They have to unearth it and let us know that this is not something that should be replicated by any other administration. The idea of Nigeria Air, I am very much in support. I'd love to see a national carrier. I'd love to be able to fly a national carrier. I always enjoyed it when I was flying Arik Air to London, Arik Air to New York, and different places. But I want to see this. I want to see this.
You didn't fly Nigeria Airways?
You were too young then. I was too young to fly Nigeria Airways.
Well, yeah. I used to fly Nigeria Airways. But you look older than I am.
I am, Ruben. I am.
Anyway, I think the issue...
You know, some of us did not fly in those days. We were so young and we didn't have that money.
No, maybe you were still in Kano.
You grew up in money.
Anyway, I think the issue is like this. The report is about the National Assembly, raising questions about Nigeria Air. Nigeria Air has been on the table since 2018. What is the concept? To get Nigeria to fly again. Many issues came up. The old staff of Nigeria Airways, they said, look, they were being owed retirement benefits, arrears, and all of that. And there was protest, by retired personnel. The Nigerian government at the time managed to pay off that. The next stage that we had was that, look, there will be some kind of demonstration in Farnborough in the United Kingdom. That also took place. But the original idea is to see how Nigeria can regain its glory as the aviation hub for West Africa, which it once was. In this same Lagos Murtala Mohammed Airport, they used to have, places where, a whole section of the airport where airlines across West Africa came to do C-check, D-checks. I once visited the store. All of those things were abandoned. So the original objective is to see how we can get that flag carrier back, but more importantly, to have Nigeria regain its status as an aviation hub. for the benefit of the country. It was also in this regard that the Buhari administration, where I'm not acting as their spokesperson, I'm just trying to give the details as they are, decided to even set up an aviation university to also train personnel and all of that. However, the missing link here, which the lawmakers are trying to point out, is that, as is the case with many government policies, they're saying that there isn't enough transparency. Senator Obiano Olujimi was quoted as saying, look, this whole project is shrouded in secrecy, the screen is saying, but I think the word she used is suspicion. Now, whatever the suspicions are, the lawmakers, either from the House of Reps or from the Senate, have a duty, have a responsibility as the representatives of the people to ask questions, to say, look, what is going on? And it is in that context that they invited Dapo Olumide, the managing director of Nigeria Air, to come and explain. And the key thing from Dapo Olumide's submission is that this was not a launch, it was an unveiling. Now, I don't know the details as to how he explained how that works, that you can charter an aircraft. So if you unveil, okay, is this another Fansboro event? Is this another way of signaling? What we can hold on to is that there are stakeholders, as the National Assembly committees in both the House and the Senate pointed out, who are raising objections. The airline operators of Nigeria had gone to court. But it is also the case, I read an opinion by Alex Zinyon, SAN, indicating that, look, there had even been an appeal in that regard that had not yet been determined, and which renders, the original objection by AON nugatory. But, maybe we'll look at that opinion by Alex Zinyon, SAN again. But if you have 4 or 5 lawyers on the subject, you are likely to get different opinions. So what you can hold on to is that the representatives of the people are asking for an explanation. And that explanation is something that the Tinubu administration will need to address. 2, or maybe 3 now. The Tinubu administration also finds itself in a delicate situation. In the last moment of the Buhari administration, there were many decisions that were taken about fuel subsidy removal. 83 memos were passed within 1 week by that departing administration. Contracts were awarded in the tune of billions. And that was why I wrote yesterday that President Buhari, who seemed to have presented President Tinubu with a Gordian knot, which he has to untie. A complex situation. That's what I mean by that. A complex situation that you have to unravel. And that will have to be part of his first assignment. So I think that people should be cautious, not demonize people, not engage in media trial over what they do not know enough about. What we know is that in this arrangement, Ethiopian Air has about 48%, the Nigerian government has about 5%. Now, the remaining percentage is said to be by private investors. Who are these private investors from Nigeria? Who are those private investors who are saying that they were not carried along? So all of these are issues that the new administration has to untie, as it has to untie many other issues with relation to fuel subsidy, which it is already dealing with relation to contracts that were awarded at last minute, in relation to many other things that administration did, including ways and means. This same National Assembly sat and said, oh, we're reviewing, amending Section 38 of the CBN Act, okay, to create room for ways and means. They said we are extending the threshold from 5% to 15%. Was that signed into law at the last minute? Will it have retroactive effect? This same National Assembly took a decision during weekend sitting, last minute sitting too. So the same Ninth National Assembly is as guilty as the departed government. So what you have now is that there are many issues that the Tinubu administration will have to deal with expeditiously. And we hope that the Tinubu administration will deal with those issues with confidence and wisdom and not on a party basis, as they say in Nigeria, that, oh, it's an APC government, let us cover up and all that. No, that should not be the approach. And to do so, going forward, will be to be transparent. That's just what the National Assembly is asking for. And all of those details that are available should be put into the public domain. But this personalization of national projects, people are saying, oh, is this person that is responsible? That's media trial. We shouldn't go in that direction. We should operate like educated people and right-thinking members of society.
Well, very true, Dr. Bati. And educated people ask questions. We probe situations, and we just want to know the answers. And as has been talked about or been mentioned, we want to have a more transparent process, which members of the Aviation Committee of the House of Representatives had also highlighted in their session. One of the recommendations from that committee was that, following the meeting, was that all individuals involved should be investigated and prosecuted, and if found guilty, should face sanctions or punishments where possible. And so this morning, I want to probe a bit further. Yes, we cannot make conclusions based on the evidence before us. It's not in our position, or we do not have jurisdiction, if I use that word, to do that. However, we can ask questions. So the first thing I want to ask is, was the former president, briefed and aware of the ongoings of Nigeria Air? In terms of this, what they said was just a simulation of what it would look like with the flag on an aircraft. And so they painted an aircraft belonging to an Ethiopian airline, so that they could launch. Another question is, why the rush? Why the hurry? It seemed like in the last days of the past administration's tenure, they wanted to put their names, on certain projects as the ones who did it, so that it would be said that under the Buhari administration, Nigeria Air was launched. It seems so. So why the rush? Why was it hasty when they hadn't yet secured the airline operating license, when they hadn't been able to start off fully? And there was a nice launch there. Media carried it. They made a show of it. Even though, and there were questions, to be honest, about no website for it, things that had to go into. And there were questions raised as to why the rush. How much money was spent for that show, that display of what the House of Representatives, members of the Aviation Committee have tagged as fraudulent? How much money was spent? Who is going to bear the responsibility for the cost of painting that aircraft? Who is going to bear the cost of the show and invitation to media personnel and payment on different platforms to demonstrate that Nigeria Air had been launched? Who is going to pay for it? These are some of the questions we're asking for. Bear in mind that if this were the case, we're not saying until the investigation is completed, but Mr. Hadi Sirika, former Minister of Aviation, was given a national award, national honors. In the last days of the president's former president's tenure, he was awarded the Commander of the Order of the Federal Republic. When you find men and women who get these, in the last minute, you begin to wonder what basis was used, what happened with Nigeria Air. How can a whole nation be, in quotes, deceived by a show of what has now been modified to be called just a demonstration when we were told it was a launch? Many questions need to be answered. It's just the beginning. Investigation, full investigation, is owed to all Nigerians, and we must see the outcome of that investigation. Well, moving on to the next story. Nigeria Labour Congress, NLC, yesterday gave reasons why it agreed with the federal government to suspend the strike schedule to commence today. NLC said it took into account a restraining court injunction procured by the government to stop the proposed nationwide strike. The union accused the federal government of exploiting ex parte injunctions to silence workers. NLC's explanation came as KPMG, a multinational audit, tax and advisory services firm, yesterday predicted that the current withdrawal of petrol subsidy in Nigeria could see the inflation rate climb to 30% from June. It recommended that measures be put in place to mitigate the effect of the new policy. Well, we're definitely going to be speaking about the fuel subsidy removal for the next few days. Your take on this story?
Well, it's very simple. I am quite happy that Labour has been able to come to an agreement with the government. It is good for them to come to an agreement. I don't want to see a situation where there will be a protracted battle between Labour and government, which will be not good for our economy. But also, I am also happy that at least government is listening to Labour and they're willing to have this conversation. But what I'm hoping to see in the coming days is the president showing that he's right in charge of this, he's top of his game, and he's doing what Nigerians expect him to do in terms of negotiation with the Labour, an agreement that will stand, that will have the seal and the stamp of the president. Because at the moment, we don't have a minister of employment. We don't have any minister in place. So the president has to take responsibility for this. So we need to see this happen, and we need to see it happen quickly, starting from today, Mr. President.
Well, I wrote yesterday at the back page of this day newspaper that what we have seen is just Act 1, Scene 1 in this matter, because there will be further developments. And by this morning, we have this development of organized labor, the Nigerian Labour Congress, issuing a statement to explain why it decided to suspend the strike. Ordinarily, their plan was that the strike would start today, and that even the three of us were not even expected to come to work, because the Nigerian Union of Journalists joined the proposed strike and even issued a statement to that effect, creating some confusion for a serious-minded and hardworking person like myself, who at the same time is, involved in, issues that affect all of us as ordinary people, with the ordinary people who are bearing the brunt of the removal of fuel subsidy, even if academically we say it makes sense because it's not sustainable. Now, what are the key reasons given by the Nigerian Labour Congress, as I have seen? And I think that some of those reasons are important. Number one, organized labor is saying, well, justice and no way. Having ruled, having granted the ex parte application by the federal government of Nigeria on Monday, had ruled that the strike should be suspended. Organized labor says, well, they had to suspend it to show to government that they believe in the rule of law and that government will follow the example, the same example. Two, that they want to create room for negotiations. The court had adjourned the matter before it, the motion on notice before it. Now, the government and organized labor came up with a 7-point communique, and they are supposed to continue negotiations on June the 19th. So organized labor also says, well, let's give peace a chance to see what government comes up with on the issues that have been tabled, including investment in education, transportation, and increase in minimum wage, and all of those issues that they put on the table. So on June 19, the negotiation continues. Three, Labour, advertising itself as an organized set of citizens, said it was the decision of Congress. So it was not the unilateral decision of the executive, but Congress took that decision. So it's important to see that Labour acknowledges the fact that the government is open to dialogue. And this is the point that we're making, that there should be dialogue, there should be negotiation, there should be compromises. The report by KPMG is saying that, look, you have to communicate, you have to dialogue, because for the rest of this year, inflation is even likely to go up to 30%. KPMG is projecting, and that before it will come down, will be in 2024. So there are very dire circumstances facing all of us as Nigerians ahead. So the dialogue will be helpful, while all of us are also trying to adjust to the reality of the details that government has to communicate. You cannot just impose something on people. You have to explain it to them, to let them take ownership of it. We can sit here and argue, do analysis, quote all the books in the world, but the ordinary people must understand and get the message.
Absolutely. Just very quickly, I saw a citizen engagement document by the NESG, and I want to say great work, because I mean, my first comment on seeing that was about time, and the government should be spearheading this. We have a national orientation agency. We ought to have a minister of information, or at least a spokesperson of the president, at least in the work, so that we can be informed. Thank you again to KPMG for painting the picture for Nigerians, the reality of what we're going to be facing in the next few months. This helps people to plan. Data, information, communication helps people to plan. It is important to take note of that. And when we look at things like that, we then look at the channels. Beyond the languages. Let us bear in mind the languages that people understand. So at the moment, communication is really high level. But speak to the market woman, speak to the people who live in rural areas. What is the impact of fuel subsidy removal? And then labor, when they go to the dialogue table, that's organized labor, to the dialogue table, should also ensure that they are representing the most vulnerable that they speak on behalf of, who will not have the opportunity to sit in a round table with government officials. This is really important. Brace yourself up. The next few weeks, months may not be very easy, but at the end of the day, what we're looking forward to is a Nigeria that works more efficiently.